Reminder of the format, it is lightning talks. It is 10 minutes, 10 slides max per talk. So I'm going to get us started with our homegrown senior product manager, Anthony Fernandes, who is going to be talking to us about communicating the value of technical initiatives as a product manager. Over to you, Anthony.
Thank you very much, Adam. Not normally that hyped when you introduce me at stuff, but it's a nice change. So yeah, as Adam says, I'm a senior product manager here at Funding Circle. I look after a couple of domains within our business, primarily checking on what people owe us, so some of the core banking tech that drives our balances, and then also implementing the credit strategies that decide who we lend to. So if I don't know why we've lent to someone or how much they owe us, it's generally a bad day for me. Outside of Funding Circle, or before Funding Circle, I've worked in a couple of different fintechs, had a quick dive into food tech, and then retreated straight back to fintech. Happy to talk about why later, but I'm here to talk about communicating the value in technical work. Maybe just a small disclaimer, I don't really have the secret answer. I don't have a formula you can use that will always work magically on your stakeholders. I'm really here to just talk through a couple of examples, a couple of approaches I've seen, and then talk about some reflections and considerations from analysing them. So to start with, I'm going to tell you the story of two different teams. Got your first team, which is on your left. They are a team that are constantly feeling the pain of complex interacting systems, and that's just slowing them down. The engineers got the product manager in a room and they said, we can fix this. And it's going to be a lot of work, but we can sneak it in around everything else. And so they just did it. They got on with it. The second team, product manager came into the team with a vision and said, I've spoken to some stakeholders. I think this is where we need to go. What do you guys think? The team said, great. We've got some milestones. We can communicate out. This is going to set us up for future success. This is all great. And they got to work. Now, both teams actually wound up in the same place. Both delivered really, really strong technical work that set the foundations for future improvements. The first team sorted out their immediate pain, they simplified their technology, and in doing so, they set the groundwork for a lot of innovation in the future. And the second team kind of did the same. The biggest difference was in the second team, they had some customer-facing launches in between, but really at the end of the day, both teams delivered step changes that unlocked a lot of future value. Now, spoiler, it's the same team. This is the same team that I've worked with for a couple of years. These were just two very different pieces of work. And I think that's maybe one of the first things to take away when we talk about communicating technical value, because it really is a case of horses for courses. You need to understand, what am I talking about? Who does it matter to? And why? And that, unfortunately, sometimes means you are backing your instincts, right? I would say that neither of these approaches were textbook. So in the first one, we weren't literally hiding the work from people, but we weren't talking about it every week, every month to our stakeholders. Frankly, because we were the people really feeling the pain at the time. And we knew that provided we fixed our own internal problems, we could then work on spreading, kind of evangelizing what we built and iterating on it with other teams. And, you know, in the second example, it wasn't like a super lovely metrics tree and a really defined mission statement that led to going, this is the direction. It was talking to stakeholders. It was getting a direction of travel and anticipating technical challenges that enabled kind of more of an iterative communication of what the technical work would do. And that iteration point is, I think, the really key thing with technical work. There's sometimes a desire to communicate technical work as just let us do this and we'll fix everything. And it's never that simple. I think you always have to bear in mind well, I'm going to do something now, and then we're going to have to build on it in the future. So that kind of gets us into, if you're trying to choose between talking really publicly about what you're doing or kind of doing it not on the down low, but maybe not super publicly, what are the trade-offs you're making here? I was thinking about this quite a bit over the course of this week as I was preparing the slides. And I think for me, it comes down to three key things, three key differences. The first one is, if you're going to be quieter about it, you're going to jump straight into production, which is great, especially if you've got a team that are really feeling the pain and they want the motivation of just cracking on with something. The downside maybe, or the upside, you don't have to talk about defining exactly what it is you're doing in the same way. I think most people here may or may not have had the experience of, you go and talk about technical work with certain stakeholders and they just come back with, yes, but what is it? And you can kind of skip a lot of those conversations if you just start it. And that also means you're thinking about explanation or prioritization. So if you just go and do a piece of technical work, someone is going to come back to you and say, that's great. What did you do? Can you explain it to me? Or you're going to explain to someone why you need to prioritize this now versus another piece of work. And you kind of have to work out which one's going to be most suitable. And then maybe the most important one, maybe it depends on what you get from work, but satisfaction versus recognition. So if you just crack on and do something, you can't really expect anyone to tell you that was really great, well done, because you haven't told them you're doing it or why it's important. And actually, sometimes I think that's okay, because you need to do something for you and your team. You just want to get it done so you can move on to other things. But, do remember that you are trading off against the recognition of, for you and your team, well done. You smashed this really hard technical problem. You've unblocked all this stuff. Turn over my slide notes. So what are the learnings from this generally? What do we need to do as a PM to make this decision well? I think one of the first things you need to do is understand your team. When your team comes to you and goes, oh, that problem you're always complaining about, it's actually a technical fix. Is that true? Is it the real source of the problem? Or is this actually just hey, this problem, we can kind of fix this and this other thing that we've always wanted to do at the same time? And I think, understanding that as a product manager is super important, because sometimes it is the same thing and sometimes it isn't. And if you don't know where you actually fall with this piece of work, you don't know how to talk about it to stakeholders. Similarly, you do need to be able to interrogate your team, right? If they say, no, it's a technical fix, this is all we need to do, you need to make sure you understand, does that fix the whole problem, fix part of the problem? And also, if your problem is extending not just kind of within your team, but outside of your team, are you fixing that problem just for your team or for the wider business? Because I think that guides both what you communicate and who you communicate to. And who you communicate to is obviously incredibly important as a product manager. You really do need to understand your stakeholders. I'm sure everyone here has stakeholders who struggle with the concept of technical work and they just are not interested in it. Your ability to translate this problem into tangible pain that they feel is incredibly important. Now, you may get really lucky. You have stakeholders who buy into delayed gratification and you can say to them, trust me, 3 months, everything's going to be so much better. And if you do, that's fantastic, and make the most of it. And then finally, you have to know your stuff. Just because it's technical work doesn't mean you can go, oh, well, engineering can explain, just talk to them. It's not going to work. You need to know how you frame this both within your team, with your stakeholders, and both before and after. Like I said at the start, there is no secret ROI formula that you can use to magically multiply returns by 1.5 because it's technical and it has a snowball effect. It doesn't work like that. You unfortunately have to know how to get people on board with this. And I think the key thing to think about there, and maybe what I'll try and leave you all with, is whatever approach you take, you're never actually going to get away from the why are you doing this question. All you'll do is change the question from why are you suggesting we do this to so why did you do this? And if you can't answer that, you're just going to be in trouble. And that's about it. That QR code is for my LinkedIn because I was told that was a very good idea. Had I realized how many there were going to be, I might have jazzed it up a little bit more. But yeah, thank you all very much.